The dust came first. It rose in a low amber cloud from the hooves of a tired horse, drifting across the main street like something half alive, curling into doorways and settling into the cracks of wood and bone alike. By the time the rider reached the hitching post outside the saloon, the town had already turned its gaze toward him quietly, without greeting, without welcome. He dismounted slow, as if the ground might betray him. The horse, a rangy bay with a scar down its flank, lowered its head and breathed heavy through flared nostrils. He wore a long coat bleached uneven by the sun, a hat pulled low, and boots that had known too many miles to remember where they'd begun. No one spoke to him. Inside the saloon, a piano struggled through a tune that sounded older than the building itself. Glass clinked. Laughter broke out sharp and brittle, then died just as quickly. The bartender paused mid-wipe as the man stepped in, eyes narrowing as though trying to place a memory he couldn't quite trust. The cowboy didn't look around much. He walked to the far end of the bar and stood there saying nothing. "Whiskey?" the bartender asked after a moment. The man nodded once. The glass slid across the wood. He caught it without looking, took a drink without flinching. His face gave nothing back to the room. Near the window, two men sat with their chairs angled outward, boots propped up like they owned the place. One of them, a broad man with a red beard and a badge pinned crook to his vest, tilted his head. "Don't see many passing through Dry Hollow these days," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Most folks got sense enough to go around." The cowboy didn't answer. The other man chuckled, "Or they ain't got a choice." "You deaf, stranger?" The bartender shifted, uneasy. "Sheriff?" But the cowboy turned then, slow as a door creaking open. "No," he said. His voice was quiet. Not weak, just measured, like he'd learned the cost of using it. The sheriff studied him, eyes narrowing further. There was something there, not recognition, not yet, but the feeling of it pressing up from beneath. "Got a name?" The cowboy took another drink, set the glass down. "Just passing through." The sheriff smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Ain't what I asked." The room had gone still now. Even the piano faltered into silence. The cowboy reached into his coat not for a weapon, though more than one hand drifted toward a holster and pulled out a few coins. He placed them on the bar. "That's for the whiskey," he said. Then he turned back toward the door. It might have ended there. But outside, just as the sunlight hit his face, a sound cut through the dry air, a sharp cry, quick and stifled, like something trying not to be heard. He paused. It came again. From across the street, near the stockyard. The sheriff stepped out behind him, adjusting his belt. "You best keep walking," he said. "Ain't your concern." The cowboy didn't move. A wagon stood there, its sides high and slatted. A man in a fine coat too fine for the dust and heat was speaking loudly, gesturing toward the wagon as if presenting something of value. A murmur passed through the crowd. The cowboy's jaw tightened, just slightly. A woman stood beside the wagon, wrists bound. She couldn't have been more than 20. Her dress was torn at the hem, her face streaked with dirt and something darker beneath it. She didn't cry out again, but her eyes moved quick, searching, desperate. No one stepped forward. The man in the fine coat smiled. "Shall we begin?" The sheriff moved up beside the cowboy. "Indenture," he said casually. "Legal enough. She owes a debt. Town collects." "She doesn't look like she agreed," the cowboy said. The sheriff shrugged. "Agreement's a flexible thing." The cowboy watched as the bidding started low at first, then rising. Men spoke numbers like they were ordering drinks. The woman shook her head, whispering something no one listened to. The cowboy's hand flexed at his side. "You got business here?" the sheriff asked. The cowboy didn't answer. The number climbed, 50, 70, 80, 100, the man in the fine coat declared. A fair price for a burden lifted. Silence followed. Then, 150, the voice came from the edge of the crowd. Heads turned. The cowboy stepped forward, dust rising around his boots. The sheriff's smile vanished. The fine-coated man blinked. "Well now," he said, "didn't take you for a buyer, friend." The cowboy didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on the woman. 150, he repeated. A murmur spread again, different this time. The sheriff stepped closer, voice low. "You don't know what you're buying?" The cowboy reached into his coat again. This time, he pulled out a worn leather pouch. He loosened it, and the weight of coins inside spoke for itself. I know enough. The fine-coated man hesitated, calculating. Then he smiled again, wider. Sold. The word fell like a stone. The woman stared, confusion overtaking fear for a moment. The cowboy walked forward, placed the pouch into the man's waiting hands. The sheriff watched every movement, something uneasy creeping into his expression. The ropes were cut. The woman rubbed her wrists, stepping back as if expecting another trap. The cowboy stood there a moment, then spoke quiet, steady. "You're free to go?" She blinked. "What? You don't owe me?" The crowd shifted, restless. "That ain't how it works," someone muttered. The sheriff's voice cut through. "No," he said, "it ain't." He stepped forward, hand resting on his gun. "You just bought yourself a problem." The cowboy finally looked at him. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to that space between them, and then the sheriff's expression changed. Not much. Just enough. Recognition. It came slow, like a shadow stretching at dusk. "I know you," he said. The cowboy said nothing. The sheriff's hand tightened. Don't," the cowboy said. But it was too late. Elias Cade, the name rippled through the crowd. A few stepped back. Others leaned in. The sheriff let out a short, humorless laugh. "Thought you were dead." "Not yet." "Well," the sheriff said, drawing his gun, "we can fix that." The sound of metal leaving leather broke the stillness. But Cade was faster, not by much. Not flashy, just enough. His gun came up, fired once. The sheriff staggered, the badge on his chest catching the light as he fell. For a second, no one moved. Then chaos broke loose, shouts, guns drawn. The fine-coated man scrambling back. Cade grabbed the woman's arm, not rough, just firm, and pulled her toward the alley. "Come on," they ran. Through narrow spaces between buildings, past stacked crates and tethered horses. A shot rang out behind them, splintering wood inches from Cade's shoulder. They didn't stop until the town fell away behind them, swallowed by the open desert. Only then did Cade slow. The woman pulled free, breathing hard. "Why?" she demanded. "Why do that?" Cade looked out over the horizon, where the sun had begun its slow descent. "Because no one else would." "That ain't an answer." He nodded once. "It's the only one I got." She studied him, searching for something, truth maybe, or a reason that made sense. "You killed him," she said. "He wasn't much of a sheriff." "No," she said quietly. "He wasn't." The wind moved through the dry grass, carrying the faint scent of dust and something distant. "What now?" she asked. Cade mounted his horse, then offered her a hand. She hesitated. Then she took it. They rode as the light faded, the town shrinking behind them until it was nothing but a smudge against the land. After a long while she spoke again. "Elias Cade," she said. "I heard that name once." He didn't respond. "They said you burned a place down, years ago, took a whole town with it." Cade's grip on the reins tightened. "They said you were a monster." The silence stretched. "Then they weren't wrong," he said. She looked at him. "But that was a long time ago." The sky deepened, stars beginning to prick through the dark. They rode on. Somewhere ahead, there would be another town, another chance, or maybe not. But for now, the road was open, and the dust for once settled behind them.